The wind was sharp and cold upon the battlements of Winterfell, more biting than usual, even for this deep winter. Snow swirled in the air, driven by the northern gale, coating the ancient stones in white and rendering every sound muted. Jon Snow stood watch, the familiar weight of the direwolf cloak heavy upon his shoulders, his gloved hands curled around the rough stone merlin. Below, the yards and ramparts buzzed with the subtle hum of preparation, a kind of busyness that belied the long and restless nights, now common since the wall had fallen. Yet, this was not the same dread that had hung over them during the war with the dead. Something older, more secretive, now crept through the marrow of the north. Jon's gaze was fixed southward, where the godswood's great weirwood stood crimson against the gloom. The heart tree's face, twisted and red-eyed, seemed to weep sap tears as it watched all that passed beneath its boughs. Arya was there, kneeling before the roots, her dark hair dusted with snow. Sansa paced near the godswood's edge, the sharp line of her jaw drawn tight with worry. Bran, now king, was far away in King's Landing, and yet Jon felt the boy's presence everywhere, as if the roots of the weirwood itself carried his mind to every corner of the world. A flutter of wings startled Jon from his thoughts. Above, a dark shadow sliced through the snow-filled sky. Regal, mighty and green, son of Daenerys' lost line, his wings beating against the storm. The dragon's return to Winterfell had not gone unnoticed, nor unremarked upon. Tales had spread to every hamlet and holdfast, drawing the curious, the hopeful, and the fearful alike. Jon could not help but feel the weight of ancient prophecy pressing upon him with every step. He heard the soft crunch of footsteps behind him, and turned to see Daenerys approaching. She wore a heavy cloak of silver fox, her hair a loose braid against her back, the pale gold strands catching what little light there was. "It grows colder every night," she said quietly, coming to stand beside him. Her violet eyes were steady on the horizon, where the snow seemed endless. Jon nodded. "It's always cold in the north, but there's more in the air now than frost." He hesitated, searching her face. "You feel it, don't you?" Daenerys' lips parted, and for a moment, she looked almost frightened. So unlike the queen he'd followed through fire and blood. "The dreams have returned. Not the ones of fire, but of ice. I see towers crowned with snow, dragons flying beneath auroras. I see the ground itself splitting open, and from the depths, light and shadow. And always your face and mine. Our blood mingling." Jon's jaw tensed. He looked away, down into the courtyard, where men and women moved like shades through the snow. The maesters say Valyria died for its pride, that its power was too great, its secrets too dangerous. But what if it was meant to be reborn somewhere else? "Nain." Daenerys touched his arm. "Do you believe that?" He let out a slow breath. "I don't know what to believe, but the old gods, the weirwoods, I've seen too much to think the world is without purpose. Bran's last letter said as much, north and south, fire and ice. Only together can the wheel be broken for good. He meant us. Our blood." She was quiet for a long time. "I'm afraid, Jon, of what we might awaken." He looked into her eyes, searching for the queen beneath the woman. "Not everything that's ancient is evil, Dany. The first pact was forged with blood, beneath this very tree. Maybe it's time for a new one." He led her from the battlements, their footsteps crunching through new-fallen snow. The wind had died down, leaving the world eerily quiet. The main hall was alive with fire and laughter, children chasing each other, dogs barking, the smell of fresh bread mingling with roasted meat. For all its strangeness, Winterfell was still a home. At the high table, Sansa sat in her accustomed place, her copper hair gleaming in the torchlight, her eyes sharp and watchful. She rose as Jon and Daenerys entered, her frown deepening as she studied them. "You're both up early," she said. "Or late. I can't keep track anymore." "We need to speak with you," Jon said. "Privately." Sansa signaled the guards to withdraw, and Arya slipped in behind them, as silent as a shadow. In the corner, Maester Luwin's successor, Maester Theodan, watched with quill poised above his parchment, always eager for the whispers of the court. Sansa waved him away with a flick of her hand. "Go, Theodan. Not a word of this is to leave this room." When the doors had closed, Daenerys leaned against the table, her hands trembling only slightly. "Bran's letter," she said, her voice just above a whisper. "He's given us a choice, to restore what was lost, or to watch it wither forever." Sansa's eyes narrowed. "What does he mean? Restore what?" Jon's voice was rough. "Old Valyria. Its magic. Its power. But not in the south. Here, in the north." Arya, who had been lounging by the fire, perked up. "I thought Valyria was just smoke and ruins now. A cursed place." "It was," Daenerys replied, her eyes distant. "But Valyria was more than dragons and doom. It was knowledge, civilization, bloodlines old as the world. Its fall left a wound in the earth, a hunger. Bran believes that wound can be healed, if we are willing to try." Sansa stared at them both, her face a mask. "And what would that mean, bringing fire and blood into the north? We only just found peace." Jon met her gaze evenly. "We wouldn't be repeating the past, Sansa. This would be something new. Not domination, but unity. Stark and Targaryen, fire and ice, in truth and in name. A pact that cannot be broken." "No, Dalani." Sansa shook her head slowly. "People won't accept it. The lords remember what happened the last time a dragon queen came north. They remember your dragon burning the battlefield, Daenerys. They remember the dead rising and the chaos that followed. They're tired of magic, tired of war." Jon's voice was gentle. "They want safety," Sansa taught him, "and hope. If we do nothing, the world will freeze and crack. There are things stirring in the dark places, the things Bran warned of. The world won't stand still. It never does." Arya stepped closer, her eyes bright. "How does it begin?" Daenerys and Jon exchanged a look, something silent passing between them. Then Daenerys said, "With a ritual. Bran sent instructions. Ancient Valyrian and First Men rites mingled. He believes if we do this, it will bind our peoples together and awaken something beneath the earth. Not just dragons, but a new kind of power. The old magic of the north, merged with fire." Arya grinned. "About time we had some proper magic again." Sansa was less sanguine. "And if it fails?" Jon looked at the table, the scars in the wood. "Then we do what Starks have always done. We endure." The days that followed were a flurry of secret preparations. Messengers rode out under the cover of night, bearing missives to trusted bannermen and old friends. The Godswood was closed to all but a handful. The heart tree seemed to watch with approval, its blood-red leaves falling like rain upon the snow. Deep in the crypts, Jon and Daenerys walked the silent halls, the old kings of winter looking down upon them from their stone thrones. Jon ran his hand over the carved face of his father's tomb, feeling the cold, ancient power humming in the air. "My father would not have understood this," he said quietly. "He believed in the old ways, the North." Daenerys touched his shoulder. "He believed in you. And the North is not so different from Valyria, Jon. Both built by blood and fire. Both lost in their way." Jon smiled, a sad twist to his mouth. "Maybe so. But what if the world isn't meant to be divided? What if the greatest magic is what happens when you mix the two?" She stepped closer, her breath warm against his cheek. "Then let's find out." The night of the pact dawned clear and cold. The sky painted with ribbons of aurora, green and purple lights that flickered above Winterfell, casting strange shadows upon the snow. The lords of the north and the few remaining supporters of House Targaryen gathered in the Godswood. Torches held high, their faces wary but hopeful. Rhaegal circled overhead, a sentinel of fire and wind. At the heart tree, Jon and Daenerys stood together, dressed in simple white, wool for him, silk for her, both marked with the sigils of their houses. Dire wolf and dragon, ice and fire, embroidered in silver thread. Arya held the old ceremonial blade, its steel cold and sharp. Sansa stood between them, the living symbol of Stark memory and Targaryen future, her hands resting on the roots of the weirwood. Maester Theoden began to chant the old words, a mixture of the faith of the Seven and Valyrian rites. learned at great effort from dusty tomes and ancient scrolls. As he spoke, the wind picked up, swirling through the godswood, lifting snow and leaves into a spiral. Jon and Daenerys clasped hands, their fingers entwined. Blood was drawn. Just a drop from each palm, mingled and spilled upon the roots of the heart tree. The blood sank into the earth, turning the snow pink. The ground trembled. The torches flickered and died, snuffed out by a sudden rush of wind. The only light was the aurora above, painting every face in ghostly colors. Then, from deep beneath the earth, a sound, a low, thrumming note, like the heartbeat of the world itself. The ground cracked, just a little, and a faint glow rose from the roots of the heart tree, green and gold and red, swirling together. Sansa gasped, her breath fogging in the cold. Arya stepped back, eyes wide. Jon held Daenerys close, their faces lit by the strange light. "Do you feel that?" he whispered. She nodded, her eyes shining. "It's alive." The heart tree's face seemed to shift, the red eyes glowing. A voice, ancient, deep, neither male nor female, spoke in their minds. "Blood has called to blood. Ice and fire joined. The old wound begins to heal. Beware the shadows that stir. Guard what you have awakened." The light faded. The ground stilled. The torches relit, flaring bright. The gathered lords fell to their knees, some weeping, others praying. Sansa stepped forward, her voice strong. "Let all the realm know. A new pact is forged. Old Valyria is reborn in the north, not as it was, but as it might have been, tempered by the honor of the Starks and the fire of the dragons. Let none break this bond." In the days that followed, changes began to manifest. The ground around the godswood grew warm, even as the snows deepened elsewhere. Strange flowers bloomed in the dead of winter, their petals red and gold. Ravens gathered in flocks, their eyes bright, their caws echoing the words of the heart tree. Rhaegal grew restless, circling Winterfell day and night, and from the crypts, whispers began to stir. Rumors of voices in the dark, of eyes opening beneath the stone, of secrets long buried beginning to wake. Jon felt it most keenly. His dreams became fevered, filled with images of dragons soaring over snowy fields, of wolves running alongside them. He saw towers of black stone rising from the earth, their windows lit with green fire. And always the heart tree, its face changing, sometimes his own, sometimes Daenerys, sometimes a stranger's. Daenerys too was changed. Her skin grew warmer to the touch, her eyes brighter. She spoke in tongues in her sleep, Valyrian, the old tongue, words no one had heard in 1,000 years. The people watched her with a mix of awe and fear, unsure whether to kneel or to run. The lords of the north were uneasy, their trust hard-won and easily shaken. Lord Umber, huge and bluff, confronted Jon in the yard. "What have you brought here, Snow? What magic is this?" Jon met his gaze. "It's not magic, it's life, Lord Umber. For too long, the north has been half dead, frozen. This pact is hope. For all of us." Lord Umber grumbled, but bowed. Others followed, slowly, warily, their loyalty shifting with the winds. As the winter deepened, new omens appeared. A great comet streaked across the sky, its tail red as blood. The direwolves howled every night, their voices echoing through the halls. Rhaegal grew larger, his scales shining like emeralds. And beneath Winterfell, in the deepest crypts, a warmth spread, melting the ice that had encased the tombs for centuries. Jon and Daenerys met often in secret, planning, hoping, fearing. "We've started something we can't stop," Jon said one night, his face drawn in the firelight. Daenerys touched his cheek. "We must see it through. For our people, for our child." He stared at her in shock, then wonder. "You're sure?" She smiled, a fierce light in her eyes. "The blood of dragons and wolves. The first of a new line. The world will never be the same." Nan. He held her close, the fire crackling. the snow falling outside. In the far north, beyond even the old lands of the giants, something stirred. A darkness, ancient and patient. Sensing the change, the pact had awakened hope, but it had also roused old enemies. And beneath Winterfell, in the warm earth near the heart tree's roots, something new began to grow. An egg, smooth and black, pulsing with life. The first of its kind, neither holy dragon nor direwolf, but something else. Something new. Old Valyria was dead. But in the north, beneath the watchful eyes of gods and men, a new world was being born. Gay. The dawn after the pact shimmered strangely, the snow outside Winterfell crusted with a thin layer of crystalline frost that sparkled with unnatural colors beneath the light of the rising sun. Maester Theodan claimed it was only ice, but the old men of the stables muttered about omens, about the dawns before the ancient kings would go to war or wed daughters to the first dragonlords. No one spoke of fear, not openly, but the shadow of something immense pressed down upon the castle. Every waking moment felt charged, the hairs at the nape of every neck prickling at the thought of what slept below. Jon Snow rose from his restless bed and gazed out the window, the wind carrying distant, eerie notes. A sound that could have been the cry of a newborn, or the echo of a wolf, or the distant roar of Rhaegal's flight. He found himself at the Godswood before he could even recall crossing the corridors, boots crunching in that rainbowed frost, the heart tree already waiting with its carved, knowing eyes. He knelt. The ground was warm to his touch, and he heard, beneath the rustle of the leaves and the stirring of winter birds, a heartbeat. It was deep, slow, and powerful. He pressed his palm to the roots, half afraid he might fall through the earth itself. "You are the bridge," the thought whispered in his head. Not his own, but ancient and enormous, as if a river of voices passed through him. "You are the blood uniting the broken lines." He recoiled, staring up at the weirwood's bloody face. "What do you want from me?" he muttered. The branches shivered. Ice fell, then a single leaf, red as a drop of blood, landed at his feet. No answer came, only a sudden hush in the air, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Behind him, footsteps approached. Daenerys, wrapped in her silver cloak, her cheeks flushed with cold, and something like fever. She knelt beside him, her hand finding his. "They're afraid of us, Jon," she whispered. "Even Sansa Dador. Especially Sansa and Arya. She vanishes for hours now. The lords walk softly around me, but their eyes are sharp as daggers. They remember dragons burning men alive, not the warmth of new life." "Nathan." He looked at her, searching for the strength that had survived so many fires. "We have to give them something more than fire and fear. We have to show them what this new world can be." Her eyes shimmered, a strange color between amethyst and storm cloud. "If only I knew what that was." He pressed her palm to the ground, feeling the throb of warmth beneath the roots. "It's down there. I don't know how, but it's waiting for us to wake it. Not just dragons, something else. Something the North has hidden even from itself." A horn blew from the battlements, startling them both. Jon rose, drawing Daenerys up with him. "Come. The lords want answers, and we can't hide behind magic and riddles forever." They strode back toward the great hall, the castle's corridors tense with the watchfulness of men who had lived through too many nightmares. Sansa awaited them at the high table, her gown dark, her hair drawn back in a severe northern braid that made her seem even taller than she was. Her eyes fixed on Daenerys with both calculation and unease. Beside her, Arya lounged, her boots muddy, a fine new scratch on her jaw. She smiled when she saw Jon, but there was a wildness to her, something feral and half elsewhere, like a dire wolf uncertain if it belonged in a castle or the wild. The hall's benches were crowded. Lord Umber glowered over a mug. Lady Mormont, fierce and small, whispered to a knot of bannermen. Even some southern guests had come, drawn by rumors. A golden-haired knight from the Reach, a black-bearded man with Lannister red stitched into his cloak, their expressions wary and full of calculation. Jon took his place at the center of the table, Daenerys at his side. Sansa stood to speak. The North remembers, my lords. But it also survives. What was done last night in the Godswood was not some southern sorcery, nor a return to the days when dragon lords ruled as tyrants. It was a pact, blood for blood, fire for ice, meant to heal the wound that divides this realm. Some of you have seen the signs. The warm ground, the strange colors in the sky, the dragon circling above. These are omens. But omens are nothing without action. So let us ask plainly. What do you, Jon Snow, Daenerys Targaryen, intend for the North? Jon glanced at Daenerys, then spoke in his rough, unpolished voice. We intend peace. We intend unity. No more North versus South. No more dragon versus wolf. The heart tree has accepted our blood, and the land is changing. We don't know yet what will come, but whatever it is, we will face it as one people, not divided. This is our promise. Daenerys rose. The Valyrian dragon lords once ruled through fear. I do not wish to rule that way, nor does Jon. The North shall remain free, but we will not be strangers to each other. A new age is dawning, not of conquest, but of rebirth, of knowledge. We will open Winterfell's gates to scholars, to healers, to builders, and we will guard against the darkness that stirs, for all the world. Neptune says. A muttering rippled through the hall. Lord Umber was first to speak. Rebirth is a fine thing for poets and priests, but what of dragons? What of the dead things in the woods? What of the warmth underfoot and voices in the night? What comes crawling from the earth when you dig too deep? Jon's face hardened. We will face it together, Lord Umber. My father taught me the price of secrets. There will be no more. If anything stirs in the deep, it is better we wake it as allies than as enemies. Lady Mormont stood, her chin lifted. My house remembers the last time dragons came north. My aunt was burned by one of your kin, your grace. She nodded at Daenerys. But we also remember who bled for us at the wall. I say, if the old gods and the new accept this union, who are we to gainsay them? Let us see what comes, but let us not cower. Arya smiled, her eyes flashing. You will find me in the crypts then, if anything decides to crawl up and eat us. A nervous laugh swept the hall, tension broken. For the first time in many nights, supper was eaten with something like hope. Yet the hope was thin and delicate, a thing easily shattered. That night, Sansa found Jon in his old chambers, seated by the fire, ghost at his feet. She watched him for a long moment before speaking. Do you trust her, truly? Sansa's voice was soft, her words weighted with years of pain and loss. This magic is in her blood, Jon. The dragons, the heat in the ground, the voices you hear. What if it turns against us? Then you will have. Jon gazed into the flames. I trust her as I trust myself. We are both made by the world, Sansa. Broken but mended together. I believe in the pact more than the blood. And I trust you to watch over us, should I ever falter. She sighed, her eyes shining with unshed tears. The North is changing, Jon. I only hope we survive what comes. He reached for her hand, clasping it tight. We will, so long as we stand together. In the days that followed, strange wonders began to appear with mounting regularity. The ground near the heart tree steamed, melting snow even in the deepest night. Crops in the glass gardens grew at twice their usual speed, their leaves enormous and bright as emeralds. Ravens nested in vast flocks. Some with feathers so pale they seemed woven from snow, others with hints of shimmering green. Rhaegal, restless, spent more time perched atop the ancient tower, crooning to something only he could sense below. Most uncanny of all were the dreams. Lords and small folk alike began to report visions. Shadowy figures dancing in green fire, wolves and dragons circling one another, then merging into a single beast crowned with antlers of frost and wings of flame. Children awoke sobbing, hands clutching the shapes of eggs they had never seen. Maester Theodan took careful notes, but his eyes grew hollow with worry. On the 7th day after the pact, Arya vanished before sunrise. When she returned, she came bearing something swaddled in furs, her face pale but wild with wonder. She called for Jon, Daenerys, and Sansa to follow her deep into the crypts. The passage was colder than ever, yet as they descended, a strange glow lit the walls, pale green and gold, pulsing from the stones themselves. Arya led them to a crumbled alcove at the very bottom, where old King Torrhen's statue had collapsed years ago. She knelt and pulled aside the furs, revealing the egg, smooth as jet, faintly veined with silver, warm to the touch even in the frozen air. "It called to me," Arya said softly, her hands shaking. "I dreamed I was a wolf running through the dark, then a dragon flying above Winterfell. Then I woke and followed the glow. It was waiting here, half buried in the earth." Daenerys reached for the egg, her hands trembling. The moment she touched it, a flash of heat filled the chamber, then a vision. Fields of green glass, rivers running with molten gold, dragons and wolves twining together around a single great tree whose roots pierced the earth and drank the fire below. Jon placed his hand atop hers. He felt the world shift, his own blood roaring in his ears, as if every ancestor, Stark and Targaryen, howled and sang in chorus. The egg pulsed brighter. Sansa watched, awed and uneasy. "What is it?" Daenerys' voice was distant, yet sure. "It's neither dragon nor direwolf. It's both. A new line, forged from the old. The heart of our pact, the promise made flesh." Jon nodded. "Then we protect it, at all costs." Arya grinned, teeth white in the green-gold glow. "Let's see what kind of creature the old gods and new have made." The weeks turned, snow falling thick and silent over the north. Yet within Winterfell's walls, the air was strangely mild, the gardens thriving, the people healthier than any could remember. Word spread, of miracles, of warmth in the long winter, of the dragon's protection. Pilgrims came north in secret, seeking audience with Jon and Daenerys, bringing books, seeds, and gifts of rare metals. Some came hoping to join the new order, others to spy or steal the secrets of Winterfell's rebirth. Daenerys took to walking the grounds with Maester Theoden and a growing band of learned men and women, plotting out new libraries, glass gardens, and forges. She spoke often of the need for healing and learning, not just warcraft. Her belly began to swell with child, the first living sign of the Pact's fruit. Jon spent long hours training with the young men and women of the North, teaching them not just the sword, but the ways of the Night's Watch. Loyalty, sacrifice, duty. Ghost, always at his side, seemed to grow larger and more cunning, his fur now streaked with patches of silver that glimmered in moonlight. At night, Jon dreamed of standing atop a mountain, his child at his side, looking out over a world remade. Valleys green even in winter, rivers of fire and ice entwined, dragons and wolves moving together as kin. Rhaegal's song changed too. He circled Winterfell, sometimes vanishing for hours, only to return with bones of strange shape, remnants of ancient creatures thought long extinct. The Maesters catalogued these bones with awe and terror. Some believed a new age was dawning. Others warned it was the end of all things. One night, as the aurora shimmered above, Jon, Daenerys, Sansa, and Arya gathered in the Godswood, the egg resting at the roots of the heart tree. A ring of torches cast flickering light upon them. The air vibrated with anticipation, as if every living thing in Winterfell waited for the next moment. The egg rocked in its nest of furs, a faint crack running down its shell. Heat radiated from it, though the snow outside piled high. Ghosts growled softly, and Rhaegal's distant roar answered, as if in greeting. Daenerys knelt, her hand trembling upon the egg. "It's time." The egg shattered, the fragments glowing white-hot before fading. In the nest lay a creature small as a kitten, scaled and furred, with wings folded tight and eyes golden as fire. Its tail curled like a wolf's. It opened its mouth, and from its throat came a sound that was not quite a howl, not quite a roar, but something entirely new. Jon reached down, heart pounding, and the creature climbed into his hands, sharp claws catching at his skin, but not drawing blood. He held it up, the Godswood silent as the dawn. Sansa wept, smiling through her tears. Arya laughed aloud, her voice echoing through the trees. Daenerys, tears streaming down her face, pressed her lips to Jon's cheek. A new world, Jon. Ours. Above, the heart tree's leaves danced in a wind no one else could feel. The air shimmered, warm and sweet, and the world itself seemed to hold its breath for the first cry of the new age. In the far north, across icy wastes and broken mountains, shadows shifted. Old powers, long dormant, felt the change and stirred in envy or hope. But at Winterfell, beneath the ancient boughs, wolf and dragon, ice and fire were one. The world would never be the same. Okay. Unusual activity has been detected from your device. Try again later. 941 8,937,494 to 70I. And therefore, a name to be. Unusual activity has been detected from your device. Try again later. 941 8,781 eds. 720 bine. And gain. Atuan. Unusual activity has been detected from your device. Try again later. 941 D5. 135 7. Juice in? Winter broke its teeth against the new spring dawning at Winterfell. No one could remember a thaw so sudden, nor a scent so rich in the air. Earthy and electric, promising birth and battle both. Even those who doubted the pact in their bones could not mistake the transformations that swept through the north. Rivers ran swifter, bearing ice-flecked meltwater from the mountains. Birch and rowan buds swelled weeks ahead of their time. The glass gardens overflowed, gold and crimson blossoms tangling above roots, gnarled by centuries of cold. Every morning the folk of Winterfell woke in a world slightly changed, the familiar shapes of their days rearranged by an unseen hand. Jon could feel the pulse of it all with every step, as if the ground itself were an old friend grown bold and alive again. It was not just the miracle of warm earth. There was a current of energy in every look, every voice, a sense that something vast and unknown had bent its will to their little corner of the world. He spent his days with the new creature, who grew with uncanny speed. They named him Fenrys, after the wolf of legend, but with a twist that marked him as something singular. Fenrys took milk at first, then bloody meat, and soon gnawed bones to splinters with his sharp, impossibly strong jaws. Scales of green and silver rippled down his back, fur the shade of wolf's winter coat lining his flanks and belly. He followed Jon with absolute devotion, his wings twitching and eyes tracking every movement. Watchful, eager, hungry for knowledge of the world. The castle gossiped about Fenrys, but reverently, almost prayerfully. Children vied for a glimpse, pressing wildflowers or scraps of meat through cracks in the garden wall. The old maids called him a sign, a living promise, and the stable boys sang songs of wolf dragons beneath their breath. When Fenrys first tried to fly, flapping up to the battlement in a flurry of scales and down, then tumbling headlong into a snowdrift, the laughter that rose from Winterfell was as bright and sweet as the new sun. Daenerys carried their second promise. She walked the ramparts each dawn, her belly round beneath her furs, eyes burning with fierce certainty. She conferred with Maester Theoden and the scholars who had come from as far as Old Town and White Harbor, building the bones of a new world. Greenhouses, aqueducts, stoneworks, smithies, even a place for healing that Sansa named the House of Pact. She wrote scroll after scroll, her hand steady even as her body swelled, her words a bridge between the wisdom of Valyria and the stubborn sense of the North. Sansa ruled Winterfell's people as she always had, but now her voice rang with a subtle power, echoing through the hall like a harp's silver string. She listened and weighed every word, knitting the old ways to the new, the hearts of lords and small folk to the beating heart beneath the godswood. Sansa stood as shield and witness, Stark and Targaryen both, the trusted judge for all who came seeking a place in the reborn North. Arya vanished for days at a time, riding out with the scouts who patrolled the boundaries of Winterfell's lands. Sometimes she returned with wild tales, of herds of elk grown monstrous and unafraid, of packs of direwolves that followed her at a distance, never attacking, only watching. Once she returned bloodied and silent, carrying a dead shadowcat cub, that had been slain by a beast with scales like slate and a jaw full of razor teeth. She buried it with her own hands, whispering prayers to the old gods. "We are not the only things that change," Arya said one night to Jon as they walked to Godswood. Fenris bounded ahead, chasing the ghosts of rabbits, a streak of scales and light in the snow. "The land answers," Jon said. "The pact was not for us alone." Arya nodded, her face grave. "You know the stories of the skin changers who ruled before the kings, of the children who spoke to trees and rivers, the giants that wandered the mountains. They're only stories, but lately the line blurs. Sometimes, when I close my eyes, I feel 100 eyes watching from the forest." He did not laugh. Perhaps they always have. They were interrupted by a rumble above. The sweep of Rhaegal's wings as he soared above the towers, casting a long shadow that seemed to swallow the moonlight. Rhaegal had grown restless, more wild, since Fenris's birth. Some nights he flew until dawn, always returning to circle the Godswood or rest atop the broken tower. Once, Jon found him perched above the crypts, peering down as if searching for the source of a familiar voice. He wondered if dragons could feel kinship across such vast gulfs of blood and time. One night, as the sky split with the shimmer of auroras, Daenerys woke Jon with a trembling hand. "It's time," she said, her voice steady, her eyes shining. "The child comes now." Word spread swiftly. Maester Theoden and the women of the castle gathered. Arya paced the corridor, her blade at her hip, while Sansa readied a basin of hot water and clean cloth. Jon knelt beside Daenerys, her hand crushing his with a grip that spoke of both dragon and wolf. The pains lasted from dusk to dawn. Outside, the castle held its breath, as if the old stones themselves feared to break the silence. At dawn, when the sun crowned the frost-rimmed towers, a cry split the air. It was not a dragon's roar, nor a wolf's howl, but something sweet and sharp and utterly new. Daenerys wept as she held the babe to her breast, a girl with a shock of pale hair and eyes the color of summer leaves. "She's the bridge," Daenerys whispered, exhausted but unbowed. The promise kept. Sansa named her Elenya, which meant new star in the old tongue. Jon held his daughter as if afraid she would vanish in the morning light. Fenris curled protectively at the foot of Daenerys' bed, tail thumping, great golden eyes blinking sleepily. The next days passed in a rush of feasting and relief. The people celebrated beneath banners of wolf and dragon entwined. Winterfell's walls rang with song and laughter. Even the oldest of the old, men who had buried a dozen winters, admitted they had never seen such joy. Yet beneath it all, Jon sensed the world shifting still. The earth's warmth was spreading. Pilgrims arrived daily. Farmers, miners, scholars, and healers, seeking not gold or glory, but hope. With them came spies, some open in their curiosity, others shadowy and silent. Sansa kept careful lists. Arya followed the most dangerous into the woods and returned with grim satisfaction and bloody hands. Daenerys called a council at the full moon. The high table was crowded with new faces. Northern lords, maesters, the golden-haired knight from the Reach, a silent woman with the black eyes of the free cities, 2 wildlings wrapped in mammoth fur. The hall shimmered with torchlight and tension. "We are watched," Sansa said bluntly. "King's Landing grows restless. Word spreads of miracles and monsters, and the world wonders what we will do next." Jon nodded. "We cannot hide, nor can we remain apart. The land itself changes, and the wise will wish to learn, while the fearful will come to destroy. We must show them what this new world means." Daenerys rose. Her presence filled the hall, light seeming to gather around her. "I will send envoys to the south, to Dorne, to the Iron Islands, to the Vale. They will come as guests, not conquerors. Let them see our fields, our healers, our children. Let them learn, not fear." A murmur ran through the lords. Some frowned, thinking of old wars and betrayals. Others nodded, seeing the wisdom. Arya leaned in, her voice barely above a whisper. "And what if they come with swords, not gifts?" Then we will meet them as one people, Jon said. Wolf and dragon, north and south together. This land is strong, and so are we. Lady Mormont stood. Let it be known. House Mormont stands with the pact. As do the mountain clans. We have seen the new spring. We will not kneel to any who seek to break it. Jon's heart swelled at the words. He looked to Sansa, and she smiled. A brief, fierce curve of her lips. Envoys were sent. Over the following moons, strangers came to Winterfell. Knights in gold and crimson. Priests from the starry sept. Even a silent brother from the east, in robes of indigo and dusk. They were welcomed and watched, offered bread and salt, given leave to walk the new gardens and study the glass-roofed halls. Some returned home with tales of miracles and monsters. Others never left, finding purpose in a world remade. As the snows receded, the first great threat came not from the south, but from within the wilds. One morning a wounded rider arrived from the east, his furs torn, his eyes wild. He spoke of a shadow in the woods, a creature that walked like a man but whose mouth smoked with fire, whose eyes burned green. Whole villages had vanished, he said, their houses charred and empty, their fields scorched. Jon and Arya rode at once, Fenrys and a dozen sworn men with them. They found the village, a blackened ruin, the earth still smoking, trees splintered as if struck by a dragon's tail. But there were no dragon prints, no sign of Rhaegal's passage. As they scouted the edge of the woods, Arya slipped away. Jon heard her cry, a sharp, wordless sound, and spurred Fenrys forward. He found her standing over a body, half buried in ash and leaves. It was a boy, not yet 20, with scales mottling his throat and wrists, his hair white as snow, his lips charred. He's one of ours, Arya said quietly. A bastard from the Dreadfort. I saw him at the last feast. Jon knelt, sorrow and dread knotting in his gut. The land changes, he murmured. But so do the people. He's not the last. They buried the boy by the river, Arya whispering old prayers. That night, Jon dreamt of a forest burning, of men with scales and claws running wild through the snow. He woke sweating. Fenrys pressed close, his breath hot and sweet. Back at Winterfell, Maester Theoden listened to Jon's tale, his face grave. It was written in the scrolls of Valyria, he said at last. Where magic returns, chaos follows. Blood will tell, but not all blood will bear wisdom. Daenerys took the news with quiet sorrow. We must watch, she said. We must learn every birth, every death, every change. No secret can be left to fester. The land must be tended, as well as the heart. Sansa sent word to every lord. Keep watch for changes in the young, for signs of fever or strength or fire. Healers were trained to treat both wounds and wonders. Not all who changed became monsters. Some grew strong and healthy, wise beyond their years. Others burned with fever and died, or wandered into the woods never to return. As summer deepened, a gathering was called, a council of all the houses, north and south, to be held at Winterfell under the banners of wolf and dragon. The roads teemed with travelers, lords, merchants, maesters, even a few priests of Aelor and Septons of the Seven. The world came to see what the pact had wrought. On the day of the council, the air was alive with birdsong and the distant roar of Rhaegal. Banners streamed from every tower. The castle bustled with color, green and silver, red and gold, black and white. Jon stood beside Daenerys at the head of the great hall, Elenya in his arms, Fenrys coiled at their feet. Sansa and Arya flanked them, proud and fierce. The lords of the north and south, wildlings and ironborn, Dornishmen and Vale Knights, crowded the benches, all eyes fixed on the new family, on the living proof of unity, power, and hope. Daenerys spoke first. Her voice rang like a bell, strong and clear. We are not what we were. The world changes, and so must we. Let this be the seat of learning, not just for swords and steel, but for peace, for healing, for all the gifts the new age brings. Now, Jon lifted Elenya, her eyes shining green gold. This is our promise. Not that darkness will never come, but that together we will face it. Let this pact endure. Wolf and dragon, north and south, old and new." The council echoed with assent, then applause. Then a roar as Rhaegal swept low above the towers, wings outstretched, Fenris howling in answer. As night fell, the folk of Winterfell poured into the godswood. Sansa led prayers to the old gods. Daenerys sang a song in High Valyrian. Arya danced with the wildlings around the fire, her blade flashing in the sparks. Jon stood at the edge of the crowd, Elenia cradled against his heart. Fenris pressed close, watching as the old world slipped away and the new was born. Above, the aurora flickered, casting the snows in every color of hope. In the deeps of the earth, beneath roots and stone and memory, the heartbeat of the world was steady and strong. Old Valyria was gone, but here in the north, tempered by winter, kindled by fire, the true promise of both was at last fulfilled. And key. Unusual activity has been detected from your device. Try again later. 941 and 852 EF 9575. King. A. Unusual activity has been detected from your device. Try again later. 940 Oniquan 1341 E9 2487 DI. Unusual activity has been detected from your device. Try again later. 940 Onek 462. D9 D27 113 Dine. Ishkwa. Unusual activity has been detected from your device. Try again later. 940 Onek 75,000. 674 A 32,487 Bine. Okay. The long days of the new spring gathered heat in the bones of Winterfell, and in the hearts of all who dwelled there. Where once the wind howled bitter, it now carried warmth and the music of life. Hammers in the new forges, laughter from children who played in courtyards teeming with unfamiliar wildflowers. Out on the moors, pastures blushed green, while herds swelled and healthy foals kicked among the horses, as if the land itself rejoiced at the breaking of old curses. The rivers foamed with snowmelt, and the towers stood tall, banners of wolf and dragon bright beneath the sun. Yet with each new dawn, Jon felt the weight of vigilance pressing deeper into his soul. The world was not yet healed, only changed, and every gift seemed to demand its price. He rose earlier than the sun, often finding Daenerys already awake, pacing the ramparts with Elenia in her arms, the girl wide-eyed and solemn, her hair now touched with the faintest shimmer of gold and silver. The child watched the world, with an ancient, silent knowing, as if she too was listening for some hidden rhythm in the land. Sansa became the hand and mind of Winterfell's day-to-day peace. She handled disputes with a calm wisdom that soothed anger and suspicion. The lords and small folk alike came to her, seeking guidance on the changes rippling through their bloodlines and flocks. She held open courts beneath the heart tree, its leaves now flush with new red and green growth, and all who left those hearings felt a quiet, measured hope, though sometimes also a cold shiver at the power sitting in the high seat. Arya spent more time beyond the walls than within. Her bonds with the wild things grew sharper. The direwolves came when she called, and once she returned to Winterfell with a pack at her heels. 6 lean shapes, and 3 monstrous furred shapes that might have been direwolves but for the glimmer of scales on their shoulders, and the strange slitted pupils in their eyes. She knelt with the beasts in the godswood, whispering to them, and they never harmed a soul unless Arya gave the word. Folk whispered that Arya was half shadow herself now, half wolf and half dragon. Fenris grew by the hour, it seemed. No longer just a cub, he now stood waist-high to Jon, his wings expanding and growing in strength, the muscles beneath his hide powerful, his coat a mesmerizing shimmer of silver green and wolf-white. He followed Jon with unwavering loyalty, slept beneath his bed, and walked the ramparts with the easy rite of a lord. When Fenris roared, the earth seemed to answer, and when he took flight above the castle, not even Rhaegal challenged him. That harmony was fragile, as all new things are. One morning, a horn blared at the southern gate, and Sansa, Arya, Jon, and Daenerys gathered to meet the newcomers. 10 riders in gold and white approached, banners of the lion and the stag, the red rose and the falcon all present, their faces taut with uncertainty and purpose. At their head was Sir Gawain Tyrell, proud and smiling, with a Lannister knight and a dark-eyed Dornish woman in riding leathers. "We come to see the truth of what's been told," Sir Gawain called as he dismounted, his voice clear, "and to speak for the realm, if you'll have us." Jon nodded gravely, his face half-shadowed beneath the weight of what might come. "You are welcome as guests, by the old laws and the new." They entered as friends, but every meal, every conversation was charged with the unsaid. The Southerners marveled at the gardens, the glass halls, the children whose eyes were now touched with odd colors and whose skin sometimes shimmered faintly in sunlight. They watched Fenris fly, saw Arya running with her hybrid dairy wolves, and every night the knights and courtiers whispered in corners, writing their secret letters for ravens that left the rookery before dawn. It was Daenerys who broke the ice, inviting them to the House of Pact, where maesters and healers worked together beside the new Valyrian forges. There she showed them not weapons, but medicines. Herbs grown with magic and knowledge, glass vials of elixirs for fever and pain, new bandages that knit flesh almost as fast as the old tales claimed. Sansa told stories of the fields, how crops grew strong and pestilence had lessened. Arya led the Tyrell Knight and the Dornish woman beyond the walls, where they watched the wild things run and saw no sign of threat. That night, as the aurora danced across the sky, Jon walked with Sir Gawain on the battlements. Below them, Winterfell glowed warm and alive, the night filled with torchlight and the quiet sounds of a world at peace. "My mother will want to know if you mean to send dragons south," Sir Gawain said quietly. "Not as a threat, but as a plea." "I have no wish to conquer," Jon said. "We have enough to do here, keeping the peace, tending the changes. But the world must see that we do not turn inward. If you wish to learn, we'll share what we can. If you wish to visit, you'll be welcome. But if you come with steel and fire, the pact will defend itself." Sir Gawain looked into the sky, where Fenris and Rhaegal circled together, their wings shining against the stars. "The old world is gone, isn't it?" Jon nodded, feeling the truth like a cold wind. "For better and worse. You must decide if you'll fight the new, or build with it." Bendermiti. In the weeks that followed, some envoys departed, their faces dark and wary. Others stayed, sending for families, for scholars and artisans, for those eager to shape a future rather than dwell in a lost past. The old walls of Winterfell became a place of meeting for all corners of Westeros. Free folk teaching farmers, Reach lords learning the ways of the north, and Dornish healers mixing their secrets with Valyrian lore. But not all news was good. From the western hills, reports of villages burning, livestock gone wild, children vanishing into the woods. The earth's gifts had awakened ancient hungers, and not all who changed could be saved by wisdom or kindness. Sansa dispatched patrols. Arya rode at their head, her wolves running before her, hunting the shadows that preyed on the weak. One night, as Jon sat in the Godswood beneath the heart tree, Daenerys came to him with Olenna in her arms. The child reached out, pressing her small hand against the rough bark, and for a moment, the leaves above shimmered brighter, the red and green veins glowing with an inner light. "She knows the land," Daenerys said, her voice trembling. "She feels it, every joy, every pain. She dreams of fires burning in the snow, of old kings walking beneath the ground. Jon, she sees things neither of us can." Jon wrapped his arms around them both. "Then we must help her carry it. She's our hope, but not our burden alone." The next day brought another change. A raven came from Old Town, marked with the Archmaester's seal. A plea for peace, a request to send maesters north to study the new gifts, and a warning: strange sickness spreading in the south. Fevers that burned but never killed. Children with golden eyes born to noble and peasant alike. The changes were spreading. The council met that night in a great hall. Sansa, Daenerys, Arya, and Jon stood at the high table. The lords and envoys crowded below, their faces lit with hope and fear. "The world awakens," Daenerys said, her words carrying the weight of prophecy, not just here, but everywhere. The blood we share, the pacts we make. These shape what comes. Let us be the first to offer peace, to teach, and not just defend. Let us build something the world has never seen, a realm of wolf and dragon, north and south, where change is met with wisdom and compassion. Sansa's eyes glinted in the firelight. We do not turn away the fearful, nor do we kneel to those who would rule us by old rights. Let every house who seeks the pact send their children here to learn, to witness, to choose. Niamdorsi. Arya drew her sword and laid it upon the table. The new world has teeth. If you would harm what we build, you'll find us ready. A silence followed. Then the lords and the ladies began to stand, one after another. Mormont and Glover, Royce and Tyrell, Martell, and even 2 Ironborn captains, grim but resolute. A pact was sworn. One beyond blood, beyond magic. A promise to guide the change, not merely survive it. That spring, Elenia toddled through the gardens, followed by Fenris and a flock of children from every land. The egg that had birthed Fenris now lay in the heart tree's roots, cold and split but pulsing still with strange light. It was said that others would come, eggs and children, wonders and terrors alike. Maesters wrote feverishly, their tomes filling with new knowledge. Healers saved more than they lost. Smiths forged tools and weapons from the new metals found in the ground beneath Winterfell, their work shaping the world to come. On the day of the first great harvest, the entire castle gathered in the Godswood. The feasting was loud and joyful, songs rising in every tongue. As night fell, Jon and Daenerys stood beneath the heart tree, Elenia between them, Fenris watching with golden eyes. Sansa poured wine upon the roots. Arya loosed a cry that echoed through the woods. Jon raised his cup. For all that we have lost, and all we have gained, for the old world and the new, may the pact endure in every heart, for all time. And so. The people answered as one, and the aurora shimmered above, the lights dancing in answer to their hope. In the deep wilds, far from torch and song, the shadows watched and waited. The power of the pact ran through the land, wild and beautiful, healing and breaking in equal measure. But at Winterfell, in the heart of all things, wolf and dragon stood together, and the world turned on a new and brighter axis. And so the legacy of the pact was born, not only in blood but in the living world itself. A promise whispered from root to leaf, from sky to stone, carried by every creature who called the Reborn North their home. AD. Unusual activity has been detected from your device. Try again later. 940 on. 151,198 to 70 BA. Autumn came late that year, gentler than any in living memory. The leaves turned gold and red across the wolfswood, but snow held off, as if the land itself honored the peace growing from Winterfell's heart. The air was crisp and rich with scent. Ripe apples from the glass gardens, hot bread and roasting meat, the faint tang of forge smoke and new-spun wool. For all who had known only the lean years, the starving springs and endless white, it was a season of near miraculous plenty. Yet with every barrel filled and every granary brimming, Jon felt the question unspoken in every glance. How long could such bounty last, and at what hidden cost? Rhaegal soared each dawn, his shadow racing along the rivers. Sometimes, before the sun crested the mountains, Jon would ride Fenris out beneath the flaming sky, the two of them cutting a path between mist and morning light. The air up high had changed, not only warmer, but alive with unseen threads that crackled against Jon's skin. Fenris' wings had grown stronger, his leaps carrying him far and swift across the broken ground. The beast was half-grown now, nearly the size of a horse, and the old ravens kept their distance from his passage, save for a handful with plumage so dark it gleamed green in the right light. From above, the north no longer looked like a country in mourning. Instead, Jon saw new fields tilled and hedged in strange patterns, the ground shaped in ways that echoed Valyrian mosaics and ancient runes. The children who ran between rows of golden wheat were of every stripe. Pale Northmen, copper-haired girls of the Reach, even olive-skinned children from Dorne and the Free Cities, their voices ringing out in laughter and in the odd tongue that had begun to grow among the young. A mingling of Westerosi, Valyrian, and something older, born of the woods themselves. Back in Winterfell, Daenerys spent hours with Elenya in the new library. The child was nearly walking, her mind uncannily sharp. She loved the scent of parchment and ink, the glimmer of glass in the sunlight, and the flickering flame that never seemed to burn her fingers. Daenerys taught her to name the ancient houses, to recite the dragonlords of Valyria and the kings of winter. But Elenya's favorite tales were always of the old gods, of wolves who ran beneath the moon and trees who whispered secrets to those who would listen. Sansa oversaw the harvest and the gathering of scholars from every corner of the realm. A council of wise women now met each week beneath the heart tree. Healers, singers, weather readers, and even one silent-eyed crone from beyond the wall. Together, they mapped the changes taking root across Westeros. Sicknesses cured overnight, children born with golden irises or sharp canine teeth, crops thriving in unlikely soils, dreams growing stranger and more urgent with every phase of the moon. Arya had become legend even among the wildlings. She could be seen in the company of giants at dawn, or following a herd of elk through the frost in silent communion. It was said she could track any shadow, slay any beast that threatened the peace of the north, but also that she would whisper soft words to those lost to their changing blood, guiding them back to their kin, or, if not, ending their suffering swiftly and without pain. As autumn deepened, envoys arrived from Old Town and King's Landing, their retinues heavy with gold, ink, and suspicion. They brought gifts of silk and precious books, but also quiet threats. Letters sealed with the crowned stag in the golden rose, offering peace so long as the North would send hostages, pay tribute, or share the secrets of their new magic. Jon met them on the steps of the Great Hall, flanked by Daenerys and Sansa, with Arya a silent shadow at his back. Fenrys lay beside him, watchful, a living promise that the North would never kneel again. A lord from the Stormlands, heavy-set and red-faced, spoke first. The realm is troubled. There are riots in King's Landing. Children born strange, crops withering in the shadow of the Red Keep. The Queen Regent seeks alliance, not war, but there are many who demand the North be brought to heel. Bunshanu. Daenerys' voice was calm as falling snow. Tell your queen there is no heel left for us to kneel to. The North keeps its pact, and all who seek peace are welcome. But if you come with steel or shadow, you will find nothing but ruin. No. A priest from the Starry Sept tried a different tack, offering prayers and silver, but warning that some in the faith now whispered the North's bounty was bought with blasphemy. Devil's bargains with old gods and worse. Sansa answered, her voice smooth and cutting. Let your faith look to its own flock, and tend to the hungry at its doors. The gods have many faces. Here, we honor them all, in deed and in bread. Arya gave the priest a look so sharp he faltered. Let him see the house of pact. Let him see every child born strong, every wound healed. If he finds devils, let him name them. Then Rao. The priest paled and spoke no more. Some southern envoys returned south, bringing tales of healing, abundance, and a world remade. Others lingered, drawn by what they could not understand. The Septon who stayed began learning the old tongue, and was often seen with the crone from beyond the wall, comparing prayers and rune. Yet not all change was peace. One dusk, a northern farmstead burned, flames green as the aurora, and the fields around it withered overnight. When Sansa's men arrived, they found only scorched earth, the bodies of livestock twisted into shapes never born of woman or beast. Arya tracked a pair of wild-eyed children to the ruins of an old godswood, their skin patterned with scales, their teeth sharp and bright. She knelt with them for hours, whispering. Her direwolves ranged about her. At last she returned to Winterfell alone, grief hardening her face. We cannot save all, she told Jon that night, her voice low. Some changes lead only to pain. We must watch, and we must judge. Nisa. The days turned colder. the light growing slant and brief. The wild things roamed closer to the walls now. Strange herds, packs of wolf dragons, and the shadows of larger beasts. Some nights Rhaegal and Fenrys patrolled the sky together, flames painting the clouds in warning to whatever watched from the woods. Jon began to train a new guard, men and women, northern and southern, some marked by magic, others merely brave. His own version of the Night's Watch, but sworn to guard the living from the dangers that came not from beyond the wall, but from within the living land. Daenerys led the House of Pact with gentle fierceness. She welcomed every question, every worry, and every mother who brought a child with golden eyes or sharp teeth. She counseled patience, urging acceptance, but she was never blind to danger. Elenia clung to her skirts, a silent shadow, her gaze growing more thoughtful with every passing day. Some said the child spoke to the heart tree in her dreams, and that the leaves answered in wind and rain. It was on the first true frost of autumn that a new danger came. Ravens arrived from the east, bearing black feathers dusted with frost, and a message from the sisters. Ships had landed, sails dark and strange, not ironborn, nor of any house known to Westeros. Men came ashore cloaked in the skins of beasts, their eyes pale and hard. They burned villages, took captives, and left behind only silence and cold. Jon called a council at once. Sansa, Arya, Daenerys, the old lords, and the wise women of the north met beneath the heart tree, its leaves whispering in the wind. "We must ride," Arya said, her voice iron. "If these are raiders, let us hunt them to the sea. If they are something worse, let us face them with eyes open." Daenerys nodded. "Send envoys, offer peace, but prepare for war. We will not let the north be torn apart by fear or foreign blades." Jon agreed, his heart heavy. He armed himself and called his new guard, Fenrys at his side. Rhaegal would fly above, the signal of the Pact's power. Before dawn, Jon kissed Elenia's brow, promising her softly, "We will return. Guard the hearth until we do." The child nodded, solemn, a little queen in her mother's arms. The ride north was hard and swift. The air grew colder as they passed beyond the warmth of the Pact's heart, the world returning to its old winter ways. They found the ruins of a fishing village first, the ground churned and black, a great sigil burned into the earth. An Ouroboros, a serpent devouring its own tail, unfamiliar to any maester. The survivors spoke in whispers of men who did not bleed, of women who sang to the cold wind and turned men's hearts to ice. Arya scouted ahead, vanishing among the dunes. When she returned, her face was grim. There are more ships and things in the woods that do not fear fire or steel. I saw a beast as large as Fenrys, but pale as moonlight, its eyes like empty pits. Jon ordered the camp fortified. The wise women spread charms and talismans, runes burned in the ground, and prayers whispered on the wind. Fenrys prowled the edge of camp, Rhaegal circling high above, roaring warnings into the dusk. When the enemy came, it was with silence. Shadows gliding among the trees, shapes almost man but twisted, half-scaled, eyes hollow and shining with a cold blue light, spears of blackened bone, shields of hide. They moved as one, without voice, without mercy. The first clash was chaos, steel ringing on bone, flames meeting frost. Fenrys tore through the enemy ranks, but for every beast he slew, two more came crawling from the mists. Rhaegal's fire swept the field, yet the shadows reformed, their wounds closing with unnatural speed. Jon fought at the heart of the storm, his sword burning with strange heat, Arya at his back, her blades dancing like wind. The wise women sang old songs, the very earth trembling in answer. Sansa's banner flew high, a beacon above the carnage. It was Elenia's cry, carried on the wind, that turned the tide. Her voice, high and clear, echoed from the heart tree to the sea, and in its wake the enemy faltered, their forms flickering as if uncertain whether to hold shape or flee. Jon pressed forward, his guard at his side, Arya and Fenrys leading the charge. At last, as dawn broke, the shadows dissolved, fading into mist and bone and silence. Only a handful of survivors remained, their minds broken, their words senseless. The ships burned at anchor, black smoke curling into the brightening sky. They returned to Winterfell weary but unbroken, the enemy banished. For now, Olenna greeted them at the gate, her arms outstretched, and even Arya knelt to embrace her. The next days were for healing, for remembrance, and for song. Sansa ordered feasts. Daenerys called the people together beneath the Heart Tree, and Arya and Jon walked the ramparts, watching the horizon. "We are not finished," Jon said softly. "The world still tests us." Arya smiled, fierce and wild. "Let it try. We are more than we were. We are more than wolf or dragon, more than north or south." Jon looked out at the land, at the banners fluttering, the glass gardens shining, the towers proud. "Let the world remember. The pact is not only for peace, but for all who wish to belong." The aurora burned above them, and from the deeps of the earth, the old heartbeat continued, strong and sure, promising that as long as wolf and dragon kept watch, the new world would endure. Okay. Unusual activity has been detected from your device. Try again later. 940 on 4B44. 941s. 727 by 9. Gah. Ka. Unusual activity has been detected from your device. Try again later. 941 7218. St22 711 by 9. AK. Punchmal. The last of autumn's gold was swept from the branches by a restless wind, and the first true snows of winter dusted Winterfell's walls, softening the sharp angles of the stone and muffling every sound. Within the castle, torches glowed bright in the windows, and laughter carried on the chill air. A laughter hard won, and cherished all the more for it. Outside, the world seemed to pause, suspended in a hush, waiting to see what would take root in the new era born of the pact. Jon woke before dawn as he always did, and walked the battlements with Fenris at his side. The wolf-dragon's fur and scales shimmered in the torchlight, steam rising from his nostrils with every breath. Rhaegal, ever restless, prowled the skies above, wings outspread, catching the glow of the coming sun. Jon gazed northward, where the wild lands met the sky, and felt the old ache, the tug of memory and duty. He remembered standing there before, as a younger man, thinking of death and endings. Now, even as winter's cold returned, he sensed only beginnings. Below, the castle had become a living thing. Every corridor and yard brimmed with the business of life. The forges glowed night and day, their new alloy, born of dragonfire and northern ore, shaped into tools and plows, as much as blade. The glass gardens pulsed with impossible color, feeding the kitchens and the house of pact, where healers in cloaks of many hues tended wounds, both magical and mundane. Children raced along the walls, some marked by the old blood, fangs sharp as needles, eyes flickering gold, a shimmer to their skin that glimmered when the light struck just so. The people marveled and feared and learned to live with miracles. Jon's council was larger than ever now. Sansa presided with calm command, her ledgers and letters multiplying by the day. Her hair was streaked with silver, a touch of age and something more, her own quiet magic, the uncanny sense for every current running through the north. Daenerys, radiant and fierce, often stood in the gardens or by the great hearth. Olenna perched on her hip. The child, now toddling with quick, sure steps, watched the world with solemn, thoughtful eyes. When she giggled, flowers sometimes opened, even in the heart of the frost. Arya came and went, a rumor on the wind, but when she did return, she brought knowledge of the wild places and news of the world beyond the pact's reach. She spoke of free folk gathering in the haunted forest, of towns in the riverlands where children woke from dreams, speaking in strange tongues, of shadows moving through the barrows and the far western hills. One evening, as the snow drifted thick and silent, the council met beneath the arching vault of the new hall, a place built of both wood and glass. Old stone and new alloy, warmed by dragonfire, piped beneath the floors. A hush fell as Jon took his seat, with Daenerys and Sansa at his side, Arya in the shadows, Fenris curling at his feet. The first to speak was Maester Theoden. parchment trembling in his hands. The messages from the south grow more urgent. King's Landing asks for envoys to discuss peace and trade. Old Town sends questions about the nature of the pact, the safety of the old faiths, the limits of this magic. They beg for assurances that what grows here will not spread unchecked. Sansa frowned, fingers steepled. They do not want peace. They want to know if they are safe from us, or if they can take what is ours. Daenerys' voice was cool and resolute. We offer them knowledge. We do not offer them our children, nor the secrets of our land. But neither will we turn away the hungry or the lost. Let them come. Let them see for themselves. Arya leaned forward, eyes sharp. There are others who watch, not just men. Old things that walk beneath the snow or hide in the ruins. Some are drawn to the pact's power. Others seek to break it. I saw footprints in the ice 2 days east, too large for any man or beast, and melted to water at the center, as if burned from within. A murmur ran through the hall. Lords and wise women exchanged uneasy glances. The old terrors of the north were never far from memory, and now, with magic awake, they walked again. Jon listened, weighing each word, then spoke. We must be what we are. Not conquerors, not cowards. If the South comes in peace, they will have it. If the old things stir, we will meet them as one people, as the pact intends. The world is changing, and not all change is gentle. But we are not alone. No threat will break us, so long as we keep faith, with each other, with the land, with the old gods and the new. Nedimo. He looked to Elenia, the child drowsing in Daenerys' arms, golden eyes flickering with dreams. This is for her, and all the children who will inherit what we build. The weeks that followed were a study in contrasts. Stillness within Winterfell's walls, tumult beyond. Envoys from King's Landing arrived, their cloaks dusted with snow and suspicion. They toured the House of Pact, the glass gardens, the forges, their faces a mask of polite curiosity, their words honeyed with diplomacy. Yet Jon could see their true questions in every glance. How strong was the pact? How far did its power reach? Could it be broken or harnessed? Sansa met them with patient grace, Daenerys with steel. Arya watched their shadows, noting every slip, every secret note exchanged. Elenia wandered among them, her laughter charming the hardest hearts, though none could say afterward what color her eyes had truly been. Other envoys came as well, wildlings and hill clans, ironborn with battered banners, maesters bearing heavy tomes. Some came seeking hope, others to study, some to steal. All left changed, some in ways they would not understand for years to come. In the wild, autumn's beauty faded swiftly. The first true storm of winter lashed the north, whiteout blinding, snow falling so thick even the deerwolves huddled in the godswood for warmth. Rhaegal roared from the highest tower, his breath melting snow to steam, then freezing it again in strange crystalline shapes. Fenris howled beneath the aurora, and every wolf in the woods answered. During those nights the dreams grew stranger. Children woke crying, clutching at scales sprouting on their arms, or remembering flight. Healers reported fevers and fits, some burning cold, some blazing hot. A few died, but most survived, changed in ways that defied all known laws. One girl grew a mane of green hair that hummed in the wind. A boy shed his teeth for fangs and gained a voice that could calm horses. Sansa wept for each loss, comforted each parent, and Daenerys sent for every healer and wise woman in the realm to learn from every case. One dusk, Arya rode hard for Winterfell, the wolves at her side, snow swirling in her wake. She burst into the hall with a tale that silenced every tongue. "There's something moving in the old woods," she said. "Not men. Something else. They travel at night, leaving frost behind, but no prints. The free folk say it is the old ones, come to test the pact." Natshin. Jon rose at once. "We ride at dawn. If they come in peace, we'll know it. If not..." Sansa touched his hand, steady and cold. "Take care, Jon." Dawn saw a company riding north. Jon on Fenris, Arya at his side, Rhaegal soaring overhead, and a dozen of the new guard. Northerners and Southerners, those marked by the magic and those who simply loved their land. They followed Arya's lead into the deep woods, where frost coated every branch and silence hung heavy as a shroud. At midday they found the strangers. 6 figures, cloaked in white, faces hidden beneath veils of ice. They moved not as men but as shadows, their eyes pools of pale fire. The company halted. Fenris bristled. Wings spread, teeth bared. Jon rode forward, sword unsheathed, but lowered. "We come in peace. What do you seek?" The tallest of the strangers spoke, voice layered and strange, echoing as if from far below the earth. "We seek what was broken and what you now mend. The blood calls. The land stirs. What will you give to keep the pact whole?" Jon answered without fear. "We give what we are. Strength, mercy, knowledge, unity, wolf and dragon, ice and fire. North and south. The land is ours to tend, not to own. If you come to threaten us, you'll find us unyielding. If you come to test us, you'll see we are worthy." The ice figures stood silent a long time. Then the leader nodded, and the air grew warmer, the frost receding from the trees. "The pact endures, so long as you remember. The cost of power is vigilance. The cost of unity is sacrifice. Forget this, and winter will return in darkness. Then..." With that, the figures dissolved into mist, leaving only silence and a single stone, smooth and blue as deepest ice, in Jon's palm. He felt it thrum with power, a reminder, and perhaps a promise. They returned to Winterfell in triumph and in warning. The stone was placed beneath the heart tree, where it glowed faintly, a light to guide the people in the long nights ahead. The winter wore on, but it was not cruel. Crops in the glass gardens fed all who hungered, fires burned warm in every hearth, and the new guard kept the roads safe for travelers. The healers learned, the maesters wrote, and the children of the pact, marked by wolf and dragon, ice and fire, grew in strength and number. Jon and Daenerys stood often on the battlements, Olenna between them, watching the lights dance above the snows. They spoke little of the south, or of war, for there was none. Peace held, stronger than steel, woven through with hope and vigilance. One night, as the aurora blazed bright, Olenna ran into the godswood, her laughter ringing like bells. Jon and Daenerys followed, Fenris and Rhaegal close behind, and all of the children of Winterfell, northern and southern, marked and unmarked, gathered beneath the heart tree. There they sang a song old as the world, voices rising together. And as the song echoed out across the land, the world answered. 1,000 fires kindled in the darkness, a promise carried on wind and snow, a memory of unity that would outlast any winter. So it was that the pact endured, in the bones of the land and the blood of the people, a dream made real and guarded by wolf and dragon, as the world spun on toward a new and shining age. Key. Unusual activity has been detected from your device. Try again later. 941-100. 27 4000, 1879 dining. Xi. Din. Unusual activity has been detected from your device. Try again later. 941, 46,659, 36 B9. The world beyond Winterfell seemed to sleep, or brood, as the last embers of autumn faded into the depths of the new winter. Yet within the castle, life did not pause. It thrived, rippling with change and intent. The very air was richer, the shadows more vibrant. By day, the light was golden, filtered through the glass gardens, through the haze of dragonfire and the drifting snow. At night, the torches and braziers shone out over the white fields, and the towers became beacons for all who wandered in from the cold. The old terrors of endless hunger and death seemed to shrink with every day, beaten back by the pact's strange blessings. Jon walked the wall each morning before the sun, as he always had, with Fenris at his side, silent as a shadow, keen-eyed, grown larger than any wolf and still only half his full strength. Some mornings he would see Elenya, bundled in furs, chasing after Arya through the snow, or Daenerys in the gardens, brushing snow from the dormant beds, her eyes distant as if reading omens in every wind-blown leaf. Sansa took her seat by the hall's high windows, watching the smoke of the forges rise and the movement in the yard below. Her mind ever turning, counting, planning, shaping the future with steady hands. This was peace, but not the peace of idleness. The House of Pact was always full. Children from the villages, merchants from the far south, scholars and wise women, all bringing tales of change, of new plants growing where once only moss would cling, of animals with odd markings and uncanny cleverness, of dreams that whispered truths in half-forgotten tongues. The healers and maesters charted every new birth, every fever or transformation, every child with eyes like melted gold or streaks of green in their hair. Winter brought its own rhythms. The harvests had been so rich that for the first time in living memory, the stores overflowed. No one would hunger this season. The kitchens rang with song and clatter, the feast hall filled with laughter and stories from every land. The stables brimmed with healthy foals and odd shaggy goats with horns curling like ram's horns and eyes that glimmered blue by firelight. Even the crows of Winterfell grew bold, strutting through the snow, their feathers iridescent and their voices echoing through the towers. Yet not all was light. In the wilds beyond the warmth of the Pact's reach, cold winds carried rumors of unrest. Sansa read the letters with a frown. Raiders on the coasts, southern villages riven by strange sickness, a new fever in King's Landing that did not kill but changed, leaving children with two bright eyes and voices that sang strange melodies. She spoke quietly with Jon each night, weighing the risk of opening Winterfell to all comers against the danger of closing their gates and hearts. One morning a wounded woman appeared at the gates, wrapped in rags, her skin ash pale, her hair gone silver. She carried a child in her arms, a boy with black eyes and a mark like a serpent coiling up his neck. Sansa brought them to the House of Pact, where Daenerys herself tended the boy. The healers watched, awestruck, as the fever left him and his eyes changed from black to green, his voice a whisper of thanks in the old tongue. The mother wept, and Daenerys held her hand, whispering comfort. Afterward, Daenerys stood in the godswood beneath the heart tree, staring at the roots. "The world is opening, Jon," she said when he came to her side. "The borders between what was and what will be grow thinner every day. I do not know what waits on the other side, but it is coming." Jon nodded. "We have to be ready. For all of it, the good, the terrible, the unknown." That night, Elenya dreamed she was running through snow, Fenris at her side, Rhaegal above, and a great shadow following in their wake. She woke weeping and would not speak, not even to Arya, who rocked her and whispered tales of wolf and shadow, until dawn. Daenerys felt her daughter's fear like a weight in her chest, but she smiled for the girl and sang her back to sleep. Arya took the wolf dragons and rode north, alone save for her beasts. She left no word, but Jon knew where she went. The wild, the haunted places, where the old gods might whisper in the wind or in the crackle of ice. Days passed, and Winterfell waited, the castle holding its breath. When Arya returned, her cloak was torn and her face was cut, but she rode at the head of a strange procession. Wildlings and giants, men and women in furs, some with eyes of burning blue, some who spoke in voices that shivered the bones. All came to Winterfell as guests, bringing warnings and stories, pledging to the pact, seeking a place in the warm. Jon and Daenerys welcomed them at the gates, Sansa standing tall at their side. The wildlings bent the knee, the giants nodded their great heads. The strange children crowded about Elenya, whispering in a tongue she seemed to understand. That night Winterfell feasted until the stars faded, and all the fires burned bright. But in the deep hours, as the wind howled and the aurora painted the snows, Jon stood with Daenerys at the battlements, watching the world. Fenris prowled the shadows below, and Rhaegal perched atop the tallest tower, his eyes glowing in the night. "There is something coming, Dany," Jon said. "Something the old magic can't name. I feel it in my bones." She leaned into him, her warmth anchoring him against the wind. We will face it, whatever it is, as we have faced everything else. Together. Now, at dawn, the snows fell thicker, hiding the world in silence. In the courtyard, the children built a great beast of snow, part wolf, part dragon, with green leaves for eyes and icicles for teeth. Elenia stood atop its back, laughing, her hands raised high. The older folk watched in wonder, some with fear, some with pride. It felt like prophecy, the image of the new age, built by the hands of the future. Sansa called a council. The lords of the north, the leaders of the wildlings, the wise women, the southern envoys, and the children of the pact all gathered in the great hall, the firelight dancing across every face. The hall was a tapestry of every blood and banner in the realm. Sansa spoke first. The world is changing faster than any of us dreamed. The land thrives, but the wild grows wilder, and those who cannot accept the change gather in the dark. We cannot rule by fear or hope alone. We must prepare for the storms ahead and for what lies beyond. Daenerys' voice rang out. The pact is not only for our children, but for all who seek peace. If the South sends armies, we meet them with truth. If the old things rise, we do not run, we stand. Arya's eyes flickered. We must remember the cost of forgetting. There are shadows older than the kingdoms. The old world never died. It just slept, waiting. Jon rose. Then let us wake it on our terms, not in fear but in strength. Let every village, every hall, every house in the realm send one of their own to Winterfell. To learn, to watch, to carry the story of this time. Let no secret rot in the dark. Let no child grow alone or afraid. Menton. A hush fell, and then the assembly stood, one by one, pledging their names, their blood, their hopes to the pact. Sansa wrote every name in the book of the new spring, and Daenerys poured wine at the roots of the heart tree. Arya vanished into the night, to walk the walls and whisper to the wolves. Winter settled over the land, but the frost did not bite as it once had. Even as storms came and rivers froze, the warmth from the pact's heart spread, through the glass gardens, the forges, the house of pact, and the bones of the castle. When famine struck in the Vale, Winterfell sent grain. When plague touched the riverlands, healers from the north arrived bearing salves and cures. When word reached the south of an army gathering in the Reach, lords and old knights unwilling to accept a new world, Jon called his banners and sent envoys, not soldiers, bearing gifts and the offer of peace. Not all accepted. Some in the south muttered of witchcraft, of the end of days, of dragons risen and wolves that talk. Yet each year more came north, drawn by the tales of unity, of miracles and hope. Children with odd eyes, merchants with goods never seen before, even priests from foreign lands seeking wisdom. The true test came not from without, but from within. One night, in the heart of winter's deep, Elenia fell into a fever, a burning, shivering sickness no healer could name. She cried out in her sleep, words no one understood, her skin hot as flame and her hair curling with green light. Daenerys held her, weeping, and Jon sat by her side, Fenris curled at the foot of the bed, howling low and mournful. For 3 days and nights, the castle held vigil. Arya vanished into the Godswood, and Sansa stood silent by the heart tree, lips moving in prayer. The wise women circled the child, singing old songs, burning herbs, drawing runes in chalk and blood. On the dawn of the 4th day, as the snows paused and the sun bled pale gold over the towers, Elenia woke. She sat up, her eyes clearer and brighter than ever, and her first word was, "Together." At that moment, the heart tree bloomed, red leaves and green in the depths of winter, the roots glowing with faint blue light. The fever left her changed, taller, wiser, her laughter deeper, her voice ringing with new power. She walked the halls as if she had always belonged, the children of the pact following her in a tide of hope. That night, as the stars burned bright and the aurora spun wild across the sky, Jon and Daenerys stood with their daughter beneath the heart tree. Sansa and Arya flanked them, Fenris and Rhaegal close by. The people of Winterfell gathered, every bloodline and banner present. Jon spoke, his voice carrying to every ear. This is our future, not bought by conquest or fear, but by faith, by tending what grows, by trusting what comes. Old Valyria lives here, not in fire alone, but in the strength that endures, in the love that binds, in the pact we keep. Let winter come. Let the world test us. We will not break. The song that rose then was louder than any before. The heart tree shivered with life, and the land echoed with its promise. In the wild, the shadows watched and waited. But within Winterfell, in the warmth and unity of the pact, hope burned brighter than any flame, enduring as the heart of winter itself. The days of deep winter pressed on, but the snows that once threatened to bury the north now lay in soft blankets, nurturing the earth rather than sealing it in ice. Every morning, as the pale sun struggled over the horizon, the castle stirred with a purpose far older than any war or feud. The work of keeping life burning, tending the embers of the new world the pact had kindled. There were chores and games, laughter and tears, and the steady, patient weaving of a future that belonged not just to the old bloodlines, but to all who chose to call this place home. Jon stood at the high window of his solar, gazing over the white fields as the first blue shadows of morning drifted across the snow. Fenris pressed against his side, the wolf dragon grown massive, silent, a living shadow with golden eyes that missed nothing. Below, the watch changed at the gates, torches flaring as the guardsmen, Northmen and Southerners, free folk and even a few former Ironborn, took their posts, banners of wolf and dragon fluttering side by side. He saw Sansa cross the yard, her cloak trailing in the snow, her breath rising in the air. She was speaking to a circle of elders, old women in patched shawls, and gray-haired men with the keen eyes of those who'd seen every trial the world could throw. Even now, in the heart of winter, she found ways to draw them out, to listen, and to lead. Her voice was the thread that held all things together, and Jon found comfort in her presence, though she never let him forget how much they owed to the stubborn, quiet labors of those who'd endured before. Arya was rarely seen in the castle proper. She came and went on her own whims, sometimes returning with snow in her hair and blood on her boots, sometimes bearing strange gifts from the wilds, a sprig of winter rose that bloomed blue in frost. A bone was once a basket of eggs streaked with silver, warm as a living heart. She taught the children to track and hunt, to move unseen, to read the wind and the fall of the stars. The wolf dragons followed her as if she were kin, and her laughter could turn a haunted night into something bright and fearless. Daenerys and Olenna had become the light of the castle's hearth. The queen moved with the easy grace of someone who knew her place at the center, no longer seeking approval, only justice and balance. The child, now taller, more sure, her golden green eyes never missing a detail, was both student and teacher. She learned every song and lesson the old and new brought to her, and in turn, brought joy and calm wherever she went. The young gathered around her, seeking her stories and her touch. She seemed to know every pain, every longing, and could soothe a squalling babe or a fretful lord with the same gentle certainty. The House of Pact became the pulse of Winterfell. In its warm halls, healers, scholars, smiths, and children gathered. Each day, a dozen new faces arrived, some seeking refuge from the cold or the world's chaos, others drawn by curiosity or the hope of seeing the changes for themselves. The sick and wounded found healing. The hungry were fed, the lost given a place among the chores or the learning. Stories from distant corners of the realm filled the fireside each night. Of gardens blooming in the shadow of ruined castles, of travelers crossing the neck and finding the land gentle, of ships braving the narrow sea with gifts and trade for the north. But beneath the peace, tension hummed like a bowstring. Not all who came were friends, nor did every soul accept the Pact's new gifts without fear. In the village south of the walls, a group of men had gathered. Old blood, hardened by grief and the loss of the world they'd known. They muttered of blasphemy, of unnatural things, of children changed and wolves that spoke. One night, they took up arms, intent on burning the glass gardens and scattering the wild things that gathered by the walls. Arya was first to know, her shadow watching as the men crept through the snow, torches flaring in the dark. She gave a sharp whistle, and within heartbeats, the wolf dragons appeared, silent and grim, eyes gleaming with warning. The would-be raiders faltered, then scattered as Fenris landed in their path, great wings folding, jaws bared. Arya stepped forward, her knives unsheathed, but she did not use them. Her voice alone, cold as the wind, sent the men running. They were caught and brought to Sansa, who listened to their fears, punished only their intent, and sent them back to their homes with a warning and an offer to join in the work of the House of Pact. Afterward, Jon sat with Arya by the fire, both of them silent for a long time. "It's not over," Arya said at last, staring into the flames. "There will always be those who cannot accept what they do not understand." Jon nodded. "The world is always changing. All we can do is hold to what's right." The winter deepened. Rhaegal flew farther and more often, hunting in the high mountains. Sometimes he returned with strange bones or treasures of old stone and metal, and the smiths puzzled over these relics, forging new tools, sometimes new weapons, from the ancient hoards. The children of the Pact grew restless in the long dark, inventing games and rituals of their own. Elenya led them in a festival on the night of the solstice, a parade of lanterns, songs in many tongues, offerings of bread and salt left at every door. The old ways, the new, woven together into something bright and enduring. The House of Pact grew too. Maester Theoden and the wise women established schools for the young, teaching letters and numbers, the lore of plants and stars, even the old runes. Healers traveled south and east, bearing cures and kindness. In return, travelers brought news of unrest in the Reach, rebellion simmering in the shadow of Highgarden knights and priests who saw the changes in the north as a threat to their own power. Jon listened, worried but resolute. Sansa sent envoys with gifts of grain and knowledge, and Daenerys wrote letters of peace and invitation, but not all were answered. One morning, a battered band of riders arrived at Winterfell's gate, their banners torn, their faces hollowed by hunger and fear. They bore a wounded woman, her hair tangled with frost, her arms streaked with strange blue veins. She was the daughter of a southern house, she said. Her family slain, her home burned, her people cast out by their own for the crime of sheltering a child born with wolf's eyes. The healers took her in, the story spread, and with it a wave of new refugees came north. Jon walked the walls with Daenerys that evening, the stars cold and clear overhead. "We can't save everyone," he said, his voice heavy with doubt. Daenerys touched his hand, her warmth a steady anchor. "No, but we save who we can, and each one we welcome, each soul we shelter, makes the pact stronger." "Some say it weakens us," Jon replied, thinking of the mutterings in the shadows, the jealousy of lords and the pride of old knights. "They're wrong," Daenerys said softly. "Strength is not in the sword or the wall. It's in what we build together." Their words were tested sooner than either wished. A raven came with news that an army, small but fierce, had crossed the neck, led by a lord of the Reach, emboldened by whispers from King's Landing, intent on seizing what they called the unnatural heart of the North. The council gathered at once. Sansa and Arya, Daenerys and Jon, the wise women and the captains of the new guard, their faces set and determined. "We will not go to war unless we must," Sansa said. "But we will not yield to threats, nor will we let the innocent pay the price for others' fear." Arya grinned, fierce and eager. "Let them come. They'll find more than snow and stories waiting." Jon led the defense, the banners of wolf and dragon flying above the walls. Rhaegal took to the skies. Fenris howled at the gates, and every child of the Pact, man and woman, marked and unmarked, wolf and dragon, free folk and kneeler alike, stood ready. When the army arrived, they found not a fortress, but a city alive. Children playing in the snow, lanterns burning, music rising from the feast hall. The lords of the Reach hesitated, uneasy. Jon and Daenerys rode out to meet them at the edge of the frozen field. Sansa and Arya flanking them, Fenris at their side, the wolf dragons massed behind. There was no battle. Words, not swords, decided the day. Jon spoke of unity, of hope, of the right to choose a future not bound by fear. Daenerys offered the bounty of the North, grain and healing, knowledge and peace. Sansa told the story of the pact, and Arya let her eyes speak the warning her blades could deliver. Slowly, one by one, the southern soldiers lowered their arms. Some turned and rode south. Others stayed, choosing to see the miracle for themselves. The Lord of the Reach bowed his head and left in silence, defeated by what he could not name. That night, Winterfell celebrated not a victory, but an affirmation. A feast for all, bread broken between old foes and new friends, songs rising to the rafters. Elenya danced among the children, her eyes alight, her laughter a promise that the new world would endure. The rest of winter passed in quiet vigilance. There were still dangers. Wolves prowled the woods, fever flared in a distant village, shadows moved at the edge of torchlight. But none could break the unity at the castle's heart. The book of the new spring filled with names, and the House of Pact sent teachers to every corner of the realm. Spring, when it finally came, arrived not with thunder or flood, but with a slow, sweet warmth. The snow melted, the rivers swelled, and the earth turned green and gold. Winterfell's gardens burst into bloom, and the first lambs of the season tumbled on the fresh grass. Jon stood beneath the heart tree, Daenerys and Elenya at his side. Fenris sprawled in the sun. Sansa and Arya joined them, all the leaders and children of the pact gathering for the dawn of a new year. Jon looked around at his family, his friends, and all the faces he had come to love. He smiled, knowing the work was never truly done, that peace was always made, never given. But here, in the north, old Valyria reborn, wolf and dragon entwined by the pact, he saw the future shining bright and unbreakable as spring's first light. The world had changed, and would change again. But the heart of it, all that was worth keeping, endured and flourished, and would, so long as hope and courage outlasted even the longest winter. Now, behind him see. The snows melted slow and steady, receding like an old memory that would never truly leave, but could no longer rule the day. Beneath the ice, grass and wildflowers awakened, and the soil released a scent so rich, so earthy. It was as if the north itself had taken its first real breath in 1,000 years. Jon stood in the godswood, boots sinking into mud, the heart tree's new leaves gleaming red and green above his head. The light fell golden through the branches. All around him the air hummed, not just with the coming of spring, but with something deeper, a promise fulfilled, the echo of the pact woven through root and stone, flesh and blood. Elenya ran between the roots, her hair streaming gold and silver, her laughter carrying on the wind. She wove crowns of wildflowers and wove them onto Fenris's head. The wolf dragon tolerated it with a dignity befitting a creature twice the size of a direwolf, and yet still so gentle to the smallest of the children. The other wolf dragons romped after Elenya, tumbling and chasing and snapping at each other in play. The children of the castle, northern and southern, freeborn and wildling, highborn and orphan, ran with them. Here in the shade, they were all kin. Jon breathed deep and watched the old world recede with the winter. The north was a tapestry now, every color and bloodline mingling, every language finding space in the yard and the halls. The old divisions, knight and wildling, lord and freefolk, blurred at the edges, replaced by the simple need to belong, to tend the land, to defend the peace. Sansa spent the days in a swirl of labor, her hands everywhere, at the ledger in the solar, in the kitchen sampling the new recipes, in the fields examining the new crops and the strange, strong roots that had taken to the changed earth. She met with lords and wise women, listened to old fears and new hopes, and always found a way to weave the needs of each into something that held the realm together. She had grown into herself, and her word was law. Not by force but by the quiet certainty she carried like a mantle. Arya came and went. Sometimes she'd vanish for a week, only to return with mud on her boots and tales of ruined towers reclaimed by saplings, or a new tribe of free folk seeking the shelter of the pact. The wild called her as deeply as ever, and the wolf dragons followed her as if she were wind or moon or prey. She taught the children how to move without sound, how to track deer and shadow alike, how to listen for the stories told by every stone and wind-blown leaf. Daenerys was the sun around which the rest turned. She sat in the house of pact each day, hearing every petition, answering questions with warmth and wit, her presence radiating confidence. She wrote letters to every corner of the realm, to Old Town and King's Lale,